This happened when I was a teenager, and the only explanation anyone's been able to offer is that it was a hallucination. I'm happy with that answer, because that means that maybe it didn't happen the way I saw it. But I wondered if anyone here might have a different suggestion. It was 1989 or 90, rural western Kansas, perhaps fall, and it was maybe 9 or 10 p.m. I was alone at my dad's house, and I was enjoying it. I don't know if it's relevant, but he was Native American, Lakota Sioux, and grew up on a reservation. But I wasn't raised with anything from that culture, and never met his family. That house never bothered me, not even sleeping in the unfinished basement, except I so badly wanted to paint the cinder blocks purple. Most everything was turned off, except for a couple of lights, and I decided to play solitaire with an actual deck of cards. I know, but it is a thing people used to do. Solitaire turned into a question game. You asked a question and turned over a card, and the suit gave you the answer. Yes, no, maybe, definitely. I was never told why you shouldn't play it alone, only warned not to. Not too far into the deck, I realized I knew what each card would be before I turned it over. Not just what suit, but the face value too. Stuff like this did sometimes happen with me as a teenager, so I wasn't too creeped out. I got over 30 cards correct in a row, certainly more than chance would allow, and I finished out the deck. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor and had bent forward to lay out the cards. As I sat up, I could see most of the living room, with the only light from a small lamp in the corner. On the wall across from me and to my right, there was an oval mirror with a dark wooden frame. Since my stepmom was much taller than me, I had to stand on something to see into it, so I usually just used the bathroom mirror. Sitting on the floor, I shouldn't have been able to see into it at all, but I could. I could see my head and my shoulders, like I was standing right in front of it, and I was dead. My hair was dark and limp like it was wet. My skin was incredibly pale. I had huge dark purple-black circles under my eyes, and I think I was naked. Mirror me didn't have glasses on, but real me did. Real me can't see the big E on the eye chart. Then I could see my reflection's right shoulder moving, and I knew its arm was coming up. Real me was still cross-legged on the floor, frozen still in complete shock. Mirror me was raising her right arm straight out in front of herself. When it was raised high enough to be able to see the arm in the mirror, the arm materialized into the living room. It was transparent at first, like a ghost, but after a few seconds, it appeared to solidify. I seem to remember her other hand coming up to the mirror frame, as if to grip it. I'm not sure because I ran out the back door before I saw any more. The mirror was between me and the front door. There was no thought, just kind of what the hell, and then stunned disbelief, then terror and flight. I ran for a little while. This was before cell phones. I didn't know where my dad and stepmom were. It was a pretty rough neighborhood, though nothing bad had ever happened to me or my friends there, aside from a drug dealer telling us what happens to people who call the police when they see a drug deal, and showing us his gun. Eventually, I was cold enough to go back home. Nothing. I turned on all the lights and snuck up on the mirror without looking at it. I used a chair, and I very, very carefully covered that mirror with a blanket. Then I went through the entire house, covering every single mirror with blankets or towels. Apparently, my stepmom liked mirrors. Leaving every light in the house on, I curled up by the back door with a blanket, flashlight, and the biggest knife I could find. My dad didn't have a gun, which might have saved him from being shot when he came home. They got back a few hours later, and I went straight down to my room. My dad left every single mirror covered, and never said a word to me about it. I overheard my stepmom hassling him about it a few times, but he wouldn't argue with her, and just said, "She has her reasons, and she'll take them down when she's ready." He would take the towel off the bathroom mirror after his shower, so he could shave, but then he'd put it back up again. I left those up for months, and he never said a word to me. I'm 40, and I'm scared of mirrors. The only one in my house is in the bathroom, and I sleep with the bathroom light on. So this just happened tonight, and I'm still freaking out. Some background. I work second shift at my company, normally from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. On the street I work, there are 2 ways for me to get home. To the left takes me over some train tracks. There's a 24-hour burger place and a Mexican fast food place that is open until 3. The police station is maybe a 10-minute drive from the tracks. To the right, it takes me straight to the highway, which gets me home. If I go to the left, I have to take side streets to get to the highway, as it doesn't connect for a few blocks, or go back over the tracks and past my workplace to get to the highway. Hope I didn't lose you there. On to the story. Tonight, I got out a bit early, about 12:30. Lucky me. I was hungry, so instead of going straight home, I decided to go for a burger. Usually I have my window rolled down, listening to music on my phone. As I close my car door, I realize a rather large spider, okay, it was the size of my thumb, has spun its web outside, between my window and my side mirror. Spiders freak me out. If it had been inside, I would have beat Usain Bolt getting out of that car. Since it was outside, I was content to leave my windows rolled up and just blast my music. As I'm pulling out, I see the train barriers come down. I'm not foolish enough to try and beat them, so I pull up and wait. As I'm waiting, I see movement out of the corner of my eye, and that's when I see him. A haggard man, maybe somewhere in his 30s, with dirty hair and clothes standing next to my car. We have a few homeless people around, but they usually don't bother you if you ignore them and don't talk to them. I figure he'll go away, but he doesn't. He walks to the driver's side and tries to open my car door. My car has automatic locks that activate pretty much as soon as you turn the car on, thank goodness. He then starts banging on my car door window. He keeps screaming to let him in. I reach for my phone, but of course I'm panicking and can't get it out of my purse, and then I immediately dropped it down the side of the seat. I'm scared he's gonna break the glass at this point. I have a foldable nightstick in my car, but in my panic, I forgot it was there. I finally get a hold of my phone and dial 911. I'm screaming at him to back off and that I've called the police. He's going around trying to get in the car via the other doors, screaming at me the whole time, calling me about every name in the book, saying,
"Get out of the car."
I'm giving the dispatcher my location, and it feels like it takes forever for the cops to show up, but was likely only a few minutes. The guy, in the meantime, is crawling on top of my car and beating it with his fists. Of course, now the train is left, and the barrier is up, but I don't want to risk killing this guy by flooring it over the tracks. Maybe that would be manslaughter if he dies or something. Not sure about that, but not willing to risk any jail time over this crazy person. Thankfully, I see cop lights coming. He runs off, and one of the responding officers gives chase. The other cop tells me to pull in at the burger place and calms me down. He takes all the information I can remember in my panicked state. He then says offhandedly something to the effect of, "Good thing your windows weren't down." That's when it hit me. The only reason they weren't down is because of that spider on my car. They didn't find the guy, as there are a lot of places to hide, and it's pretty rough terrain at night, but they did say they would step up patrols around the area. The cops assured me I did everything right that I could have done, didn't get out of the car and called for help. I decided to skip eating out, as I wasn't in the mood anymore, and just went home to have a freak out and methodically quadruple check all my doors and windows. The cops said they would call if they found anything, so we'll see. I don't know what his deal was, but creepy guy who tried to get in my car, let's not meet. And to the spider that may have inadvertently saved my life, I'll let you slide this time. Summer of '03. We had been living in our new home in Voorhees, New Jersey. My cousins from Belgium had come to visit. It was about 10 p.m., and we had been in my room watching a Disney Channel movie and eating snacks. The younger girls, my sister and my younger cousin, had fallen asleep, so my older cousin, MJ, and I decided to go to the den where the boys were, my little brother and 2 cousins. My bedroom was pretty big and had a huge closet with sliding mirror doors on the side where the door to my bedroom was. In between the closet and door was a bookshelf/armoire. My queen-sized bunk bed was perpendicular to the windows looking out towards the front of the house and the lake. There was a desk and computer against the wall between the bed and mirror closet. The television was on the wall opposite to the desk. There was a library nook that could be seen from the bed, that bent off from the wall where the TV was. When you opened the door to the room, you could see the bed in its entirety, the television and desk, the side of the armoire, but not the mirror. There was a huge light in the middle of the room in the ceiling, and a lamp next to the bed and one on the desk. My cousin MJ and I were cleaning up all the food and mess and bringing it downstairs. She told me to go back up and check if anything was left in the room. I went up to check and saw nothing. I picked up the pillows on the floor and put them in the library nook in my room, when I noticed a light beam in the mirror, coming from what I thought was a car outside. I kept walking toward the door and closed it. Right next to my room were the steps to downstairs on the right-hand side. I make it only 2 steps, and I hear my little sister that is 5 screaming bloody murder. She keeps screaming and yelling for my mom. My mom runs to the bottom of the steps and looks up at me. She asks me what's wrong, and what did I do to my sister. I say I didn't do anything. She just started screaming, and my mom asks why I didn't check. I couldn't explain to her that as soon as my sister started screaming, my whole body felt like it had been zapped. I was holding onto the railing, and I swear I felt like I had been electrocuted or something. My mom pushes past me and opens the door. I go back up 2 steps, and I can see into the room, my mom walking up to my sister on the bed. Next to her is my younger cousin, and she is still dead asleep. The room is lit up, and my sister is still screaming and pointing. My mom turns to the mirror, and her face goes pale. She tells my sister not to look, and that it's nothing. I am confused at the whole thing from my view in the hallway, looking through the open door. I walk a step into my room, and my hairs go up. My sister is still screaming. My mom is embracing her, and they are huddled together, and my cousin is still asleep. Something inside of me is telling me, "You are so stupid. You can't see it? You can't see what is wrong?" There's a cognitive dissonance happening in my brain. Then all of a sudden I notice it. The lamp next to my bed is off. The lamp on the desk is off. The light overhead is off. When Mom opened the door, the room was lit. I had never turned on the light, and yet my whole room is lit up. I then notice it coming slowly from the side, like it is sliding through. It is very bright, but not blinding. I turn to look at it, but stop as it's halfway through my peripheral and into my line of sight. There is a giant orb of light hovering in my room, coming from the mirror. It's about the same size as a single-person sofa. I realize that it's not that it's an orb of light that is frightening, but the light has a face, a humanoid face. It looks like one of those mannequin heads that girls put wigs on. The light head starts turning for me, and I feel it is about to speak or say something. I have this irrational fear that my mom will blame this on me. I have no idea what it is I didn't want her to know, but I feel the light is here for me. I turn and book it out of the room. This all happens in less than 5 seconds. My older cousin is on the steps already, seeing what the fuss is about. She asks me what's wrong. I can't answer. She starts to walk into the room and says, "What the hell?" The light disappears. My cousin gets her sister. They get the girls and start taking them downstairs. My sister is still screaming and crying. All 3 boys come from the den, and we go to the living room. While my mom is processing everything, the boys ask what happened. I stand there silent, hearing my heart beating in my chest. My mom tells them what she saw, and the boys bolt upstairs to my mom's protest. I'm standing there, and my mom says, "Those aliens you saw were real, weren't they?" I'm confused. I ask her what she's talking about. I've never seen an alien in my whole life. She says when your older cousin had visited 4 years ago. It comes back like a flash. The UFO. I told her it wasn't aliens, it was just a UFO. I thought I dreamt that or something. She said, no, you didn't. I went and got my diary from my room, while the boys were still in there, looking for the light man. I brought it downstairs, and sure enough, I wrote about it. My mom called the boys down, and asked my brother to tell her about the UFO. He too looked confused. Then you could see him remember, and his account matched with what I wrote in my diary. I don't think the face of light or light man and the UFO are related. I do think I bring strange things around, as does my little brother and some of my cousins. My little brother is now an accountant. He's highly religious and hates talking about all this stuff, but we call each other when we have weird dreams. My little sister basically went crazy and is a hot mess. I've traveled the world and have a good job. I graduated with 2 degrees and with honors, but strange things have not stopped happening for any of us. They just aren't as frequent. So this happened around 2 years ago. My family and I were going through a difficult time. My mom was having a lot of depression and was feeling completely drained to the point she couldn't keep up with the day in the slightest. I should say, the women in my family have a high sensitivity to spirits and the supernatural, and my mom and I are no exceptions. So fast forward a bit, everyone is very worried about my mother's mental state, and she doesn't seem to be getting better. That's when I start to notice some weird activities in the house. At first, I just saw some shadows creeping around longer than usual. Then I started to pay more attention. I noticed a very strong male presence in the upper floor of my house. There, the air seemed to get colder, and there was always the feeling I was being watched. The presence was exceptionally strong in my mother's bedroom. I started seeing the shadows more and more around her side of the bed, and reflected in a large mirror she keeps facing the doorway in her room. One day, I was brushing my teeth in my bathroom. It's located in the middle of the hallway, and looking in my mirror from inside the bathroom allows you to see the hallway and into my mother's room. I leaned over the sink, and when I straightened back up and looked at the mirror, this thing looked back at me from the hallway. Time seemed to stop, and I could see every detail of it. Its skin looked like crumbled and yellowed old paper, with black cuts all over it. The neck seemed to have been tied with rope so tight, the pattern was pressed into the skin. The eyes were pitch black, and it had needle-like teeth. It smiled at me, and when I turned to look at it, it wasn't there, but I could still feel the presence. I told my mom about it, and she called a medium to help us out. The lady apparently expelled the thing from the house, and since then, my mother is doing very well. We don't really know what it was to this day, but we sure are glad it's gone. This happened on the last night of our trip to Thailand, but before we start with the story, I want to describe the room. There was a twin bed, with the usual night tables on both sides. On my side, there was a control panel for all the lights in the room. In front of the bed was a desk with a mirror on it, allowing us, my girlfriend and I, to see each other anytime we'd sit on the bed. On each sides of the mirror were 2 lamps. On my girlfriend's side was also the door to the bathroom, and right next to the door, another giant mirror. The door to exit the room was buried in a tiny hallway right next to it, where you'll find your usual hotel wardrobe. We spent a whole week in this hotel, and everything went fine up until the last night. I couldn't sleep. I was just kind of waiting to fall asleep, with my eyes closed, except that I wasn't tired at all. In fact, I knew I wouldn't fall asleep for quite a while. That's when I started hearing some kind of noise in the hallway outside the room, a rhythmic tap. Distracted, I couldn't help but focus on that tap. While it was a bit annoying, my only thought at the time was that the hotel was just old, and the walls or the floors were just making noises. Suddenly, the tap changed location. I was wide awake, mostly creeped out, but not terrified just yet. The tap was suddenly coming from inside the room, right next to the bed on my side. I didn't know what to think of it, so I kept my eyes closed and waited again. And then the tapping ended, and I felt what seemed to be a really light, really cold blanket softly fall on my head. Creeped out, I couldn't just sit and wait. I had to get up. As I sat in the bed, I took a look at the desk, and naturally was forced to look at the mirror. As soon as I looked at myself, the lights flashed. I got really spooked and decided to use the control panel next to my bed and hit all lights. They all went up except one, the one in the hallway leading to the door to exit the room. I sat there under my blanket, waiting for a little while, completely startled by all of this. All I could think was, if there was actually a ghost in this room, what the hell was I going to do about it? And so I waited. But it wasn't the end of it. It started again, but this time it was a little bit faster. I was just waiting to get dragged out of bed or something. I felt that light blanket on my face sensation again. It felt cold, so cold. And suddenly, the light in the hallway flickered and turned on. I was so creeped out I woke up my girlfriend. She looked at me. I had tears in my eyes, and I was pale, and she asked,
"What's going on? You look dead."
I know this sounds insane, but I think something's in here with us. She did not answer. I kept on staring at the mirror, but her silence got my curiosity. I looked at her. She was staring at me, crying and completely terrified. It did not help my courage, because I started crying as well. I asked her what she was crying about, and she replied,
"I was having a dream before you woke me up. A tall man was looking down on us. He was in the room, here with us, but inside the mirror. And he was smiling the whole time. It felt as if he wanted to do something bad."
This story was called in by a listener to the Art Bell Show. The caller was an employee of a funeral home, which as part of its services, catered to people who wished to have their bodies cryogenically stored. Cryogenics is a procedure where, for an ongoing prepaid fee, the deceased person's body is kept alive, for lack of a better term, after it's been pronounced officially dead, and then is quickly frozen and stored in a special facility, in the hope that one day, in the not-too-distant future, science will have come up with not only a cure for the disease that the person had died from, but also a method of reviving a frozen corpse and bringing it back to life. This may potentially take thousands of years, if it is at all even possible. The funeral parlor employee was waiting for the physicians to call the man deceased for a number of hours at the hospital. When they finally did, he applied to the dead man's body a piece of machinery described as the thumper, a device which sounded as though it functioned to keep the blood flowing through the body, and the lungs sort of respirating, in an emulation of the living process, evidently with the hope that this might lessen the deterioration of the body whilst it is being transported to the cryogenics facility. It was during this trip in the hearse to the cryogenics lab that the attendant heard a voice come from the back of the vehicle, where the body was being stored. It stated words to the effect of, "What's going on?" Looking in the rearview mirror, the driver said that he saw the recently deceased man sitting bolt upright in the back, but he was a semi-transparent form and looked somewhat puzzled. He kept repeating his question, to which the amazed attendant replied that he had died. The dead man's even more surprising response was that he was fully aware he'd died, but thought that there must have been a mistake, because he wasn't supposed to be conscious in this form, and that instead, he fully expected right now that he should be being revived in a cryogenics lab, and back in his physical body. Both of them in a state of shock, the driver pulled over, and then explained to him that he was currently being taken to the cryogenics lab. The two of them had a bizarre conversation on the side of the road, where the dead man, not knowing what to do about this situation, and the equally confounded funeral parlor employee tried to work out between them exactly what the course of action that should be taken was. They eventually decided that the spirit of the man should try to stay with his body. At this point, the interview with the caller pretty much was terminated, after he explained that after this, the business never again took on another cryogenic job. My apologies to the original caller, should he be reading this. I hope I didn't make too much of a hash of the original story, although I have listened to it a number of times, and I'm pretty sure I got 90% of it right. I know it's easy to call BS on this story, and there's nothing to substantiate it at all. But I wonder if we could speculate as to what are the implications of it, if it did indeed really happen. In the late 90s, I was around 8 years old. My cousin, who is 2 years older than me, is and has been my best friend for my whole life. We will call her Emma. Our families were also close, and only lived about 20 minutes from each other. So needless to say, we spent a lot of time at each other's houses. We'd stay up late watching movies, raiding the kitchen, and listening to CDs. Of course, I liked it more when she stayed at my house. I loved sleeping in my own bed, but her house was fine too, and that is where the incident occurred. I remember it being somewhere between Halloween and Christmas. It was definitely cold outside. Her room at the time was a basic setup, dresser against one wall with a TV on it, bed against the other. She had those huge sliding mirrors for closet doors. We were up late as hell, as usual, and we started getting tired. We climbed into bed. We always slept with each other. So Emma passed out in like 5 minutes, and at some point, I did as well. I woke up a while later, just out of nowhere. In like a fraction of a second, I was awake. I laid there for a minute, trying to figure out why I woke up. Everything seemed fine. She was snoring away next to me. All of a sudden, I got this horrible feeling, like I felt like I might throw up. And right at that moment, Emma stopped snoring. I thought maybe she woke up too, but I couldn't even hear her breathing. I got goosebumps. I was getting really creeped out really fast. So I'm laying there facing Emma in the dark, and a car passes the house. The headlights catch the mirror doors, and light fills the room for a few seconds. My heart almost exploded in my chest. Emma was facing me as well. Her eyes were bulging out of her head, and she had this wild smile on her face. She looked crazy. It didn't even look like her. She's just staring at me, smiling, in a pitch-black room. I pushed myself backwards, falling to the floor next to the bed. The car had passed. It was dark again. I decided there was no way I was going to stay in that room. I felt my way to the door, and then heard her start breathing again, and the bed shift. I didn't want to find out what she was doing. I ran down the hall into the spare room, and locked myself inside. I tried falling to sleep as best I could, and eventually I did, but not before quietly waiting for Emma to come and get me. The next morning, she woke me up by banging on the door. When I told her the story, she didn't remember anything about it. She said I was probably dreaming, but I know I wasn't. I didn't stay there for a while after that, but eventually I did, and nothing else ever happened. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. Send your story or creepypasta to the email in the description. My shirts, Patreon, Instagram, and Twitter are down there too. Anything you do to support the channel is appreciated, even if it's just a like. Be good to animals, even people. See ya. Yeah, how's your brother doing? Nice, well tell him I said what up. Hold on a second. Hey, I'm on the damn phone. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Go play with that in your room or something.
Yeah.
Jesus. Sorry, I'm watching my nephew. He's getting on my damn nerves. You hear that? Gave the dude a popsicle and he's going crazy now. Dude, I said be quiet or get out of this room. What'd you say to me? Don't make me pop you one, dude. Alright? I know I'm the cool uncle and all that, but I will destroy you. You know what, dude? Let me call you back.
Ja, snämar, bergsbus, hörs.
I was having a dream before you woke me up. That's my lady voice. That's what I'm gonna do women's voices from now. I was having a dream before you woke me up. A tall man was looking down on us. He was in the room, here with us, but inside the mirror. And he was smiling the whole time. It felt as if he wanted to do something bad.